Welcome to Ear Biscuits. I'm Link.
And I'm Rhett. This week at the round table of dim lighting, we are exploring the question, is it ever okay to kill someone?
Whoa.
Yep, getting real.
And, if so, are we ready, willing, and able to do it?
In today's video, we are going to look at editorial illustration. Not only it's another form of illustration, but it's also been a task that my tutors have assigned to me. I have done editorial illustration before, but I've never had to listen to a podcast. Our tutors wanted us to try something a bit different this time. Instead of following a news article online or in a newspaper, they asked us to download an app in which we could listen to audio. And from said audio, we had to produce one illustration final piece. And we were only given 1 week in order to complete this task. The topic that we could choose from could be a variety from political discussions, radio series involving fictional characters, or a podcast. I chose Ear Biscuits, which is a podcast by the infamous Rhett and Link, who are also known as Good Mythical Morning on YouTube. On their podcast, they tend to talk about some weird and interesting topics, and this particular episode I chose to listen to was, is it ever okay to kill someone? Now, from the sounds of this title, you would think they were metaphorically and hypothetically discussing about killing somebody, maybe as an idea or for a specific reason, or how they would tend to do it. But it's actually about a series of scenarios or an ethical test involving life and death situations. So, while listening to the podcast, I noted down some key points that they said and discussed that might make a really good illustration. Now, before I get on to the actual practical side of this video, I want to explain a bit about editorial illustrations. Similar to clickbait, editorials are to capture the reader's attention. The more simple, abstract, or bizarre the image is, the more likely the reader will be enticed to figure out what the image is trying to convey. So, I started to draft out and sketch my ideas ready for my tutors to look at. A quick tip for all you first year students out there who are spooked about presenting your ideas for a theme, always have some visual images to help support your explanations. Trust me, they will help your peers and your tutors get a better idea on what you envision, especially if you're absolutely pants at explaining things. My 3 final draft sketches were this train track, 2 people on a deserted island, and someone taking a selfie of the good side of their face. Just to give you a quick reminder, all the images that I'm sketching out, drafting up and finalising are things that have been spoken about on the podcast. If you want to head over to Ear Biscuits to listen to Is It Ever Okay to Kill Somebody, then feel free. Within my sketches, my final drafts, and within the podcast, a theme was reoccurring.
Uh-oh, Nicholas. This train is going to crash into these 5 people. Should we move the train to go this way, or should we let it go that way? Which way should the train go?
If you're not familiar with the trolley tests, let me give a quick example of one. A runaway trolley is hurtling toward 5 unsuspecting railway workers. If it hits them, it will surely kill them. You happen to be standing next to a switch that could divert the train onto a separate track, where only 1 rail worker is standing. If you flip the switch, the 5 workers will be spared, and the single worker will be killed. Would you flip the switch? Here's another example of a trolley test. You are stood on a platform of a train station. and a train is travelling down at high speed and it cannot be stopped. On the track the train is coming down on, there are 5 people who are unconscious or incapacitated. You happen to be standing next to a lever which will change the train's path. However, this path also has 1 person on who is also incapacitated or unconscious. What do you do? In fact, the trolley test is so vast you can make one up on the spot. For example, you are on a bus on your way home, and the person sat in front of you presses the button for the next stop. As they go to stand up and leave, they drop their wallet without realising. You are the last person on the bus to get off, and are within reaching distance of the wallet. You can either shout to the person that they dropped their wallet before they got off the bus, or you can keep the wallet for yourself. What do you do? Not exactly a life and death situation, but the same principles apply. You've been given a scenario in which you have responsibility of whatever happens. And this is what the podcast discusses: how binary and unreliable the trolley tests really are, and how unlikely the scenarios will ever occur. Despite how basic and unreliable the tests are, both Rhett and Link give their answers and explain why they do so. Originally, I wanted to illustrate one of these tests. However, one of my tutors asked me, "How are you going to combine these together?" This gave me a really good idea. Instead of just me trying to illustrate one of the tests, I could get them all to link. And by linking them, I'll use the train one as my centerpiece. Utilising the tracks, I could have them snake around different trolley tests. My tutor also gave me some feedback on my characters that I've drawn. They don't really specify a race or a gender or a specific age, and they look quite humorous, which the podcast does contain humour when discussing about these tests. So for me, hearing this was really good. So with this feedback in mind, I began to sketch out different ways to tackle this. As I'm doing this, I want to tell you about the exercise I'm doing. When you've got an idea in mind, set yourself a time limit of 30 seconds to start off with. This is to empty your brain out and put down as many ideas as possible. After that, set your time limit to 1 minute. This will give you a little longer in refining your 30-second sketches. After a minute is over, set your timer for 5 minutes, again refining your 1 minute sketches. Then set it to 10 minutes, then 20, and then 30. Not only this gives you something to refine to show your development, this also gives you the skill to work quickly. If I'd known about this exercise in my first year of uni, it would have saved me so much time and would have helped me a lot with my coursework. These are the ones that I've got so far of the 10-minute sketches of my roughs here. I had an idea what I wanted to do. I was running out of trolley tests, so I'm wanting to do a bit of research and have a look at different types of trolley tests, whether it's mentioned in YouTube videos or in articles or something like that, or just trying to make up my own. I don't know, and then see if, I get a response from it, and then see what comes over from that. Because the trolley test needs to make at least some sense and not just complete nonsense. Here's some of the ideas that I really liked. The desert island discs. Which track do I want to choose when I flip the switch? Taking a selfie of the good side of your face and not the entire face, because the bad side, no one wants to see that. And then here are some of my initial sketches on what I want to do, maybe using the literal meaning of, is it ever okay to kill someone? Someone looking very quizzical, whether they're thinking about committing the crime or someone else is doing it for them. Or at one point they spoke about a masseuse. So And interesting enough, this one right here, they actually mentioned about a documentary called The Dawn Wall, and on their journey they were kidnapped by a terrorist group, and in one segment one of his friends, they ended up with one fighter, and two of the friends were talking amongst each other whether to push the guy off the cliff or not, and he did. Sometimes if you're faced with life and death situations, you'd be surprised on what you'll act upon rather than say what you do. How the trolley tests tend to flaw is what we think we're going to do and what we're actually going to do are two different things. For example, I would say I would pull the switch to save 5 people and let one person die. But in reality, would I actually do that? Would I just leave it? Would I just walk away? Would I panic? Would I flip the switch? And this brings me on to another thing that in the podcast they mentioned, a YouTube series by Vsauce, or better known as Michael from Vsauce. And he does this YouTube series called Minefield, where he does basic experiments, and it also involves other people. One of the experiments was the trolley test. They actually put it into practice. They actually recreated a live trolley test. It's interesting to watch. I recommend you watch it. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. Well, I'm almost ready to do the A3 illustration. Get ready for a little quick speed drawing. So I went into uni with this, and when I finished this, I didn't, it wasn't really how I imagined it or pictured it. It just looks very empty and it looks rushed. Whereas everyone that I saw with their final drafts on what they want to do, they all look very professional and almost looked finished. So there's something I'm doing wrong here. Or not that I'm doing wrong, maybe there's something that I lack. Maybe there's something that I'm missing here. And so I asked my tutors for some advice on how could I get from this to something like this as a final thing. And what they told me was, what are my strengths? What is the medium that sings to me the most? Because my final year is based on building up my portfolio, I need to create things that have my voice in. Both of them said that the characters I've done are very strong, and it seems to be a recurring theme within my work throughout my years of being at uni. So maybe I need to stick with those characters for my work. Also, I prefer the medium watercolour. I've been using it most of my life, since school pretty much. I think I should start maybe doing more things like that rather than just something like this. The other feedback I got was, it is interesting, but because of it being zoomed out, it looks very empty and maybe a bit much in some places. Like, you can't really make out what's going on. And I was also told that there's a hidden element of humour in my work that I may or may not have even noticed. Some of the things that I've got is maybe colour coding the tracks that you see in the underground. There are a lot of empty spaces, so maybe zooming in with less tracks and not too many tracks. Draw people bigger, then shrink them, because how I drew them was just as they are, instead of maybe blowing them up and then maybe shrinking them down, doing like a reference image on the computer or something. The faces are lost, and what they mean by that is that the drafts that I did, they really liked how humorous the characters looked. So it's sort of, I'm all over the place trying to find my voice. Maybe drawing the tracks a bit bigger, but not too big, because they're quite small on here. Play with different coloured lines instead of just black. Now, I thought that was an interesting piece of feedback. Most of my line art contains, obviously, black fine liners. Maybe try with a darker colour instead of black, maybe a dark blue or something. Add colour, and I highly agree with this. It is so plain, so boring and uninteresting. There's nothing going on. I might need to change. Instead of adding all of the trolley tests, just focus on one. With that said, I want to start from scratch, and I'm going to follow the tutor's advice on using what I'm more comfortable with. So, I'm going to get cracking on with this. Enjoy this time lapse. Back to the drawing board. I redrafted my ideas to again empty my brain out and to get familiar with my ideal goal. I've decided to stick with the one that most people are familiar with, the train tracks. I wanted to capture the essence of decision making in a form of panic. I exaggerated the facial expressions and looked at some reference images of a train and a connected track. I chose to limit my colour palette to one, that being purple. The reason why I chose purple is that depending on how you utilise the colour, you can have it represent as a darker message. For this I used different shades of purple to paint a form of atmosphere in the image, and personally I see purple as a panic-induced colour. Oh, you must be back from watching that time lapse. We got from this to this. So I'm gonna find out what people actually think when looking at this, what image it tries to convey. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my flatmates as a form of guinea pigs and I'm going to see if I get any feedback from them. Okay, I've sent the image and I've put, alright, my guinea pigs, tell me what you think of this image is trying to communicate. Someone has decided if to screw one person or screw many. It's the dilemma. Do you save one person you know, or do you save many people you don't know? I've also sent the image to my coursework group chat, and I've got between a rock and a hard place. I think this communicates more about the podcast. For now, I'm going to leave this where it is. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it gives you some insight on my thought process on how I come up with my my ideas, also how I deal with my struggles, the feedback I've been given, and I'll see you next time. Stay thirsty.